I'm fucking retarded. Oh no, I said a bad word. Well, did act a bit silly. I wouldn't necessarily say it was wrong to say that I was acting a bit out of line and out of character. But, you know, guess it's a subjective matter. What was I gonna put up on this? Oh, I was gonna put on some misinformation. Some good old misinformation. Who doesn't like being lied to, everyone? You know, at home, I like to leave the news on all the time. And, I don't know if I want to start off that heavy. Even I'm like, do I want to go that heavy? I don't know if I want to go that heavy. Oh no. Just moving my microphone. Should have muted it if I just wanted to move. Oh yeah, I should do an intro of some sorts. Yeah, my name's Ramirez. Call me whatevers. You know. Nah, I'm joking. Ramirez, Ogie, Frog Bear, Frog. I go by many names. They know me by many faces too. We didn't do a stream on Friday because the server was pretty slow. What else could I say? Rabbithole.show. In any of those descriptions of those videos, you can find the Telegram group to get any of the videos that I'm about to show today. Actually, that's a great point to make. What else could I be saying? I don't know. As you can tell by my hair, I'm a bit out of it, you know. Feels like I've had my head bashed in quite well. I could say some very disparaging things about waking up next to somebody that I don't know. Not like I actually did. Yeah, I was just thinking more about like what could I say to be funny right now, you know. But yeah, I wrote down notes. I was gonna do these yesterday, but no, I wasn't. I didn't have any notes yesterday, but I was gonna do a stream. Then somebody showed up, so I called the stream Deletion. In reality, I wanted to call it a Western critique. A Western critique? A critique about whatever. You know, I'm just trying to like emphasize that I wanted to give a form of criticism on current iterations of Westernisms, right? What is the current baseline for how people maintain themselves, right? If a baseline was being married back in the day, what's the current baseline? What's the averages? Right? Playing games of statistics, da da da. But can't call it that. I could not call that this stream that because that book. There's a book on there. I think it's called the Western Criticism or a Western Critique. It's a book not very much liked by YouTube, and it's not very liked by a lot of the modern. What do I want to say? This our current educational systems and institutions would not deem that book agreeable in today's standards, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Rude awakening, blaming someone. So yeah, I wanted to give a sense of Western criticism because there is no baseline. We are living in actually something on the screen right now. This guy, this dude. Means I can't move out of this square, but so this dude is Michael. Where's my? So Michael Parenti. the Darker Myths of Empire, Heart of Darkness series. So, this is at the University of DuPage or DuPage. I don't even know how to say that. If I were to say that in its correct colloquialisms. Um, but this dude, at like his beginning portion, I've talked about too, where he mentions how our empires, or like whatever we read of history, whatever we're currently reading about history, has been written by a victor, and then right, but that depends on each nation, right? Because each nation has to some degree of control of what they're writing and what literature is being released to the public about their history, right? There's right, just read an elementary textbook. That's all I'm saying. It's very colorful language, and it doesn't really capture the true essence of what like actual decisions that were made into deciding how this country led the way it was, right? Back to Howard Zinn. But this dude talks specifically about Rome and how what we think of Rome and its virtuous qualities, kind of a facade, mainly because all of this literature was written within the walls of Rome. And within the walls of Rome was a very different, they painted a very different picture of themselves versus what they were actually doing to the rest of the world, their empires. There's much to be actually said about the sacrifices that were made in order for Rome to maintain its quality of life. And this dude does a great way of explaining that in the beginning portion of speech. The part that I'm picking is about the Spanish-American War, and kind of something that I always like to talk about, which is who benefits. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because to no ends, to absolute no ends, do I hate ideologues. I hate people who put identity above everything, and they'll let that idea permeate through their entire existence. Like, I've lost friends because it became a culture war. It became an ideologue war. It no longer was about, the decisions that were being made. It was more about because X, Y, or Z of something physical, something that you can't change. And it's like, do you not see that because you're creating these standards of you can't change, right? I can't change that I'm Mexican, as he can't change that he's white, versus someone that can't change that they're black. When you set these things and you set them in stone, all you're really creating is the playing field for one singular thing to happen: deletion. And that's it. You're not setting up a system where you can build on top of that. And I like to go back to this guy because it goes into how people like to claim that Rome was so virtuous and this and that. And it's like a lot of the ideas you can take from Rome, you can learn from, you can apply them into like today's standards. But that's it. Like we have to stop seeing the facade of, oh, but this and that virtuous, and like, I don't know how to explain this idea. I just see people get caught up in this ideological. I always say ideological because it combines two different standards: your identity and your belief system. When you combine these two things, that's what I call an ideologue. I don't know if that's a real word. I've been using it since I started encountering these people, where regardless if they were on the left or on the right, they were always the same standard of people. They were always idealistic, in the sense that their ideals stood above all. It didn't matter the actual practice. It didn't matter the facts. It didn't matter any of these other standards at all. And what I'm currently seeing right now, like I said, I to no ends absolutely hate ideologues and their view of the world, because they set up these standards that are definitive. It is set in stone, and it's almost like they've never learned what the argument of original sin is. So like, what do you believe that when babies are born, they're born with sin because of X, Y, or Z? It's like, I don't know. But it goes back into me talking about Ayn Rand and how she said that you have to teach philosophy, right? Like I said, a lot of good things came out of Rome, but a lot of people kind of fetishize and fantasize what Romans actually were, and it's just like, don't get me wrong, a lot of great things came out of there, but at the same time, it's what America's currently doing, where you are raping and pillaging the rest of the world for a very few class of people, and the rest of the empire gets enough. They get just enough so you're complacent, while the rest of the world starves. It's like, how does that price pay out? And then the people at the top create this argument of, well, there is no infinite. There's only like a definite. So that means there's a definite amount of resources. That means that everything's going to end. And it's like, that's a lie. If you look at how the Amazonian rainforest is, and how, there's special properties about the dirt, this and that. Like, we haven't explored living at maximum efficiency is what I'm saying, ever, because there is no benefit to having an efficient system, because the people at the top make money, they generate profit off of the creation of definite resources. But I don't know, I'm getting lost in all this because I'm trying to build the idea that everybody right now is going to blame a specific class of people. And just as much as I hate them too, because they're ideologues. Again, my whole argument is against ideologues. People who put an identity above everything else. Above everything else. They'll jump hoops. They'll just, they'll meet you with that blank face that most SJWs meet you with, which is, no, my belief system, my beliefs. And they just, it's not even a deer in the headlights. It's almost like eventually it becomes like moments of gratification for the person, because they get to actually repeat what their belief system are, and it's almost like an affirmation for themselves. And I'm like, what makes you different from an MK Ultra subject? What makes you different from like any of these other people back in the 60s, the 70s, that were going through these mind altercation experiments, all for the sake of what? In a very, like, I don't know, I get lost in these ideas. So people are all going to blame a very specific class of people, and I'm just like, you guys are idiots. Like, there is a big difference in what you're trying to say. And when you look, right, this is why I wanted to call it a Western critique, because in a sense we call this breeding tactics. We call breeding tactics, tradition, whatever. You can pick up some stories about like nobility, or you know what I mean, like some fantasy book about how these nobility classes will distinguish themselves with their behavior, with their etiquette, with the way they speak. Kind of funny because we talked about this. Either way, best breeding tactics. So gotta get into culture critique, because these things that I'm critiquing are the traditions. Like, these are traditions that are passed down through a various format. So most of them are religious, right? So Judaism, Muslims, with Islam, Christians and Catholics at this point in time, these people don't even remember, they don't even remember why they pray the way they do. They don't even know why monks pray at certain times the way they do. Like, these people are just, they're suffering from a very deep form of psychosis, but whatevers. So with Jews, they actually teach their kids multiple languages. They'll teach them etiquette. They'll try to set them up with enough understanding of the world so that when they actually go out there, they'll know how to maintain themselves in a fashion that isn't detrimental to the kid, right? That means the kid will be able to survive regardless if it's like high class, low class, whatever. It's just the parent, at least the way they see it, is they want to impart them with enough of the knowledge of how to maintain themselves in this world. I don't know if they do that on purpose. I don't know if it's just something that they do because that's the way they grew up. That's the way their dads and moms told them to grow up. Who knows? But there is that passing down of that sort of information, and Muslims do it too. So let's be for real. There's a reason why Dubai is the way it is. Then let's talk about the capitalist product mindset, and by that I mean these are people that I'm not even talking about trends. I'm talking about that they see the market for what it is. They see it for what the actual value is, and that's attention. They look at it that way. That's why they're always trying to sell you something. That's why they know how to get their foot in the door. That's why that word came about. That's how a sales pitch was developed. Basically, these people, when they saw psychology, they didn't see, oh, how this could actually benefit man. No, they were like, no. How could we hijack the human mind to make it work as efficiently as possible? These are two different mindsets. But it gets down into that nitty grittiness of that's a capitalist product mindset. They see things in a very cold cut, calculated way. How these people turn out the way they do, I don't know. But I've met people like that. And they'll live their life on a dime. But you have to remember, these people, I'm not saying there's a lot of them, but there's enough of them. You have to think about it that way. If there's enough of them, there's only one path that they will inevitably walk. There's an inevitable ending for these people, which is usually very lucrative positions because, a lot of these corporations, what's their objective? What's their end goal? If somebody has a really great skill set, what's going to happen with that inevitability? So all I'm suggesting is when you create these actually I need to finish this. And then you have breeding culture. And that's akin to like the, Rust Belt America. Or that's what you consider just people who live, who work. There is no, they are of the world. I don't know what you want to call them. I don't even want to say NPCs. I'm just saying that these are people that are just normal people, average people. A lot of people are just fucking average. But let's not even get into the, oh my god, I'm the protagonist of my own story. Okay, we're not gonna go there. So with these breeding tactics and with me looking at this through a Western critique where I'm literally going cold hard cut at this. And this is why I got, if me and you can shop at the same locations, at the same markets, if there is nothing that is denying my accessibility to any of these stores, to any of these locations, I can drive to Beverly Hills. I can go eat at fucking, what's that cupcake place called? Sprinkles. If I wanted a Sparkles? I don't know, whatever. Right? There is nothing stopping me besides my ability of wanting to go there, right? You're the same. You're a peasant. You're a citizen. You're the lowest form of caste, right? Once you start moving up in tax brackets, that's when you're being, right? That's actually kind of a very interesting way of me looking at this, because that means there is an entity that has identified you in such a capacity that you have upward mobility because you are now meeting very different economic factors. But that by no means does that suggest that you can move up the caste system. You just moved up the financial system. Either one. So people, getting back to my absolute disdain for people who are ideologues, who will try to blame the tiny-headed individuals, because this is an inevitability. And I don't know if I want to show that video now, but I will put it on this. An idea of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this guy, Cliff High. I like Cliff High. Cliff High is G, my boy. G. And I don't know how to describe it. But he's about to describe that there's going to be, this is the next wave of what's going to come. This is the next wave of people that are going to show up and become very privy to this issue that's about to arise, actually.
Because we're going to be waking up.
Okay. I just to fix this really quick because I know this thing isn't picking it up correctly. Is it? No? Alright. I got it to work. Nice. I'm not gonna go there yet. Back to Western critiques. That's the breeding tactics. What is it? Is it culture? Is it genetics? And clearly, the people who want to put this and pin this on genetics want to put this to a science that I've seen get its own bashing in various circles. And I'm not talking about that whole God aspect of it, of intelligent design. That's not what I'm talking about. One of the best arguments I heard was, if, right, it's just like, if it is it a quantifiable date? Is there a quantifiable time span for an evolution to occur? Has there been other examples of these timelines, right? Have we seen birds grow extra legs? Have we seen birds change beyond what they've looked like, right? If we started seeing like a new subspecies of pigeons, what would be the length of time that is required for us to see a notable mutation within that species, right? Well, human beings who have been akin to documenting all of human history so far, I don't think I've ever grown up with a book that actively shows any animal actively evolving. And that part, like, I'm not even into the whole, I'm not into any conspiracy theories about evolution theory. Not at all. I have no stake in that fight. But when I heard that argument, it really got me to think, like, you're right. There's a lot of species, there's a lot of animals, and you know, like, there's lab rats, right? Lab rats are specifically designed because of their lifespan, how many they can churn out. So you're telling me, out of these scientists that have just these lab rats, they've never seen visible mutations within these lab mice that have led to a better breed of mice? Like, I don't know. That to me was mind-blowing when I started thinking about that. But, right, so I'm not saying breeding tactics like that, but I am bringing up the idea of genetics are real. Well, let's put that to the test. If we look at people who are suffering from psychosis, and by the psychosis, I'm talking about our current paradigm of psychosis. How many people are suffering from that? Realistically. How many of them are sucking at the teat of their authority figures that taught them Western world is what you should trust, is what you should believe in? Trust the science, trust the doctors, trust the teachers, trust your university education, trust that nobody ever lied to you when you were growing up. That. Like, I know I'm painting a very dark picture here, but it's like, there are a lot of people that have never wanted to think about these ideas. There are a lot of people that will obfuscate from wanting to thinking about any of that, because there's a very big notion that's going on right now, especially with the Buffalo shooter, which is, he's an absolute fucking brainlet. Like, how do you have the views you have when your two friends are minorities? How do you have the views you have when your own, I don't know. I just think it's funny, because I'm just like, I believe that white people are suffering from the most severe case of psychosis, institutional psychosis. Like, by no means will they ever come to grips with that they've been lied to. Like, at all. Like, it's even coming up as a resurgence in them not being able to recognize that Germany was stolen from them. Actually, in reality, that's currently what we're seeing right now. We're currently seeing up the setting up of dominoes for another Weimar situation, where they want to blame a very specific ecclesiastic group of people that only did what? That realistically only did what? Does anybody know? This is a history lesson. It took away Palestine from the Palestinians, and they gave that land to Israel. Like, you are quite literally setting yourself up for that same tactic of, because realistically, like, I don't even know. If I say this, like, people will start calling me all sorts of fucking names. At the fact that I think the only reason why some of these camps suffered the way they did was because American bombers were cutting off supply lines. But nobody ever wants to bring that up. And if you look up at the times of when certain things happened and what militaristically, right, what do? You cut off supply lines if you want to win a war. And I mean, that's neither here nor there. But nobody wants to talk about that because it brings up a lot of questions. And, you know, people will start calling me a lot of names. So, back to, we eat at the same places. We go to the same locations. We are equal. We're both the equal low-ass, class-ass citizen. The only difference between us is the tax bracket, right? As in what we pay to Big Daddy government. Because at the end of the day, my limiters are very different from your limiters. Then if you aren't, all right, and if you're a part of the three great religions, I'm dead serious. If you're a part of the three great religions, and if you're just at the very surface level of understanding these religions with no historical context, with no understanding of what decisions were made for our current cultural paradigm to be the way it is, like there's deep levels aspects to the woo-woo, right? Like, at least these are very deep convictions that I have. If you are a part of the three great religions, which is, you know, if you're Jewish, you're Muslim, or if you're a Christian or a Catholic, you are just the lowest form of citizen. Like, especially if you know nothing about, you know, if you don't know about like stuff like the Zohar, if you don't know about stuff like I can't just say Gnosticism. Like, if you don't know anything about its weird mystic roots, if you don't know about I can't remember. I don't know too much about the Muslim occultic arts, but there is occultic arts to Islam. Like, there are levels to this, and if you're just at the very surface level and you're just fighting political fights, like, you are beyond an NPC. Like, you are of this world. You are not a part of it. You are of this world. Like, you're just sucked into that. Like, there, you know, it's like Half-Life. You get the meat crabs, they get under your face, and you're just like, like, you literally got a tube down your throat, my boy. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's kind of fucked up for me to say. If actually, oh no, it just dawned on me. I'm not hearing anything. Okay. I guess it just paused. Yeah, leave it to me to forget where I was in this thing. Oh yeah, if you're a part of the three great religions. If all of you, wait, what is this? If you if what people are aware of is what others have taught them, or like the trend, right? Everybody's following a trend or something like that. They're just citizens. Like they are just absolute citizens. They I don't even remember what it denizen in, but like citizens, just the lowest form of the caste. Like absolutely. Like Beast have better sense than most of these people. I don't even know where I was gonna. Western critique. I'm just really stuck in this whole. There is this lack of conversation that is needed for people to understand that the way everyone likes to see their own culture, their own race, is through rose-tinted glasses. Nobody wants to actually give valid criticism over their own race and over the way that people maintain themselves at all. And this is coming from somebody who has a side of a family that to them, that's all it is. Like, I saw them go from trend to trend to trend. Like, these people all were wearing Ed Harley when that was a trend back in like 2006, 2005, whenever the fuck that was. Like, those were the people I was always constantly around. So I know what it is to have people live inside of that world and not see anything past that. Now with politics and now with the way things of the world are going, like that people are waking the fuck up. But they are going to want to blame someone. And that's where I'm stuck. That everyone's going to want to blame a specific tiny-headed group of people, but it's just like, shut up. They just had good breeding tactics. I'm sorry, but that's nothing special. Because at the end of the day, if I can go visit their supermarket, they're not really that fucking special. Like, even regardless if you live in specific neighborhoods or this or that, like, you're still the same. You take the same roads. You live the same life everyone else does. Just because you decided to be a magistrate, just because you decided to be a lawyer, just because you decided to like work at a better office does not mean you are the UBO. You are not the ultimate beneficiary owner. You are not the ultimate line of the food chain. Which, actually, let's get into this. I'm actually going to turn off the Telegram. Like 30 minutes in.
This is 1898 now. 1898 was a rather interesting time. This is when the U.S. has embarked upon this other great humanitarian crusade called the Spanish-American War, where McKinley said we have to fight this war because we have to save the poor Cubans from the Spaniards. And what was McKinley's first act of war? Does anybody know here? It really stunned a lot of people. He took a U.S. Army and a U.S. fleet, and he went thousands of miles across the Pacific, and he invaded and conquered, in what turned out to be about a 6 or 7 year bloody war, the Philippines.
What? We need to save the Cubans. Invades the Philippines. And people. Actually, this gets better. This gets better because I'm just giving a Western critique, right? Just notice how people were told one thing, but something completely different happened.
Because they were rich. Because that set up the Pacific Empire of the U.S. And that had been their goal all along, to get into the plunder of this, to find the new markets and the new resources for that top 1 or 2% of the investing class.
Top 1% of the investing class. Investing class. Not everyone's an investor. Not just, well, now more than ever people have Robinhood accounts, but no. This discussion I think was released in 2012. Probably older than that. I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, no, probably 2012. Oh no, this was November 16, 2005. Oh boy. Right, think about that. Who was the investing class at that time? Realistically. And people are going to say, well, in reality, it's still the tiny hats. I'm like, no, no, no. Give me an actual UBO. Show me who is the ultimate beneficiary owner. Just because they manage the funds, just because they run the books, run the accounts, doesn't mean anything. They're just magistrates. You'll never solve the actual problem. You'll never actually get all of the resources that they've stolen if you just go after the people who work at the place. Because at the end of the day, they just thought it was just a very, like petri dishes, right? When you're doing cultivations of funguses and stuff like that. That's ideologues, right? Their petri dish is just set up differently. That's all it is. From grandfather, from grandma, to their sons, to the sons' sons, to the sons' sons. They just taught their lineage how to maintain themselves. Just because they kept their actual cultural values throughout all these years doesn't mean jack shit. It just means that their people had a good sense about them, I guess. And realistically, from what I've seen, I'm not saying all of them, but I am saying the ones that tend to be in these positions of power tend to be very paranoid. And usually those type of people do not fare well when they have absolute power. And I think I remember hearing like a great joke about how like, you want to know why you don't see any Jewish janitors? Because if you do, they'll actually, right? They have complete control of the building. They have every key to every door. What makes you think it won't go too far? And right, he made a joke about like installing surveillance cameras everywhere and this and that. And like, eventually even the principal's like, hey, you're just a janitor. Like, what are you doing? But I have all the keys. It was just a stupid joke, but it goes, there is, you could have good sense about you because of something, but it doesn't mean shit. I thought they were great accountants because their language is all numbers. That's what I always thought the whole time. And that's kind of what woke me up to like, that's kind of racist when somebody was like, oh, what are you, anti-Semitic? And I looked at them, I'm like, no, I'm making a clear observation about their language and numbers. Like, what the fuck are you on about? And that's when I really started, when was that, like 12th grade, 11th grade? I was really young. And that was the first time I ever heard the word anti-Semite. And I was like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? Either way. And again, like, who is the top 1% of the investing class at a time, the late 1800s? Who was running the country at that time? Like, you could actually look at their names, look at who were running these companies at the time, and I can guarantee you'll see a very, very disparaging gap and lack of tiny-headed individuals.
And the Springfield Republican, a newspaper that had supported McKinley and the war, and half of the American population that had supported this, more than half, they were all going crazy. Let's go in and save those poor Cubans. Let's whip the Spaniards. Stop them. The Springfield Republican wrote an editorial saying, hey, what's this war all about? We thought it was to liberate the Cubans. And where the hell are you going all the way to the Philippines? Well, it wasn't. It was to build this empire. Well, this is
to build their empire. That's something that a lot of my friends, I still call them my friends. That's the thing that a lot of my friends forget. Their empire. It was the Romans' empire. It was the Romans who did all this shit. It was they who built all this crap. Well, not even the Romans. It was the Roman people. But then the Roman Empire fell, and then you got the Byzantine Empire. And then out of the Byzantine Empire came the Roman Catholic Church Empire, which is still standing today. So I asked the question again. What constitutes the fall of an empire? The demise of the people and the land? Or the right of rulership? The right of trust? What constitutes the fall of an empire? I don't know.
This is what Tom Watson has to say about this. Shut off your cell phones, please. Thank you. This is what Watson has to say. The Spanish War has finished us. The blare of the bugle drowned the voice of the reformer. When the war was still in progress, he added this. Who gets the benefit of the war? Cui bono? Who benefits?
Who benefits? Is that so hard to actually want to quantify? People will want to point to the accountants, this and that, the bookkeepers, this and that, and it's like, they're not the UBOs. They're not the ultimate. I keep saying UBO because that's an actual business term. You could look up in a business law dictionary and look that motherfucker up, and it says ultimate beneficiary owner, the person who gets all of the profit. Somebody owns the company. It's not the CEO. It's not the board. Not the committee. Right? These were just layers of obfuscation for their magistrates, for their pawns, for the people that have bent the knee and have kissed the ring. But remember, Queen Elizabeth ain't shit. You know, no offense. I largely think that lady passed away already, and like, I don't know.
The bond seekers, the capitalists, the railroads, national bankers will profit by this war. The new bonds give them the basis for new banks, and their power is prolonged. The privileged classes all profit by this war. It takes the attention of the people off economic issues and perpetuates the unjust system they have put upon us. Politicians profit by the war. It buries issues they dare not meet.
Should I remind you, this is the Spanish-American War? Late 1800s? Late 1800s? You know, I really want to emphasize who were the men that were leading the country at that time. Because those decisions largely affected what we are currently looking at now. But all of these people will be like, oh no, but by virtue of the skin that I have, I get to share the glory of the decisions of those men back in the day. Yes, yes, I am pristine too. And it's like, no, you are just suffering from a very different weird way of Stockholm syndrome. Just because you were lied to and given like a false perception of the reality that we're all both living in. We were born into this world. Like, we had no actual decision on the making of the way things were made. I don't know. I find myself just repeating these ideas. I actually never verbalize these ideas. But, you know, these are the things I toss around in my head because I look at people like the Buffalo shooter and I just have nothing but utter pity. I have nothing but absolute sadness. Like, a lot of the times, I just think about the friends that I made. Just think like, y'all being lied to. You're just like, this is the best thing ever. Ooh, all of this knowledge, like there's no problem here. And it's just like, you are actively killing yourselves. Like, you've stopped being able to distinguish like if it's poison or not, and you're just happily eating it while you're neglecting all of the real factors that are affecting the nation as it is now, right? And that's the way men have been demasculated, the way just the social contract, the way people have managed themselves between men and women has been largely destroyed by hookup culture. There is no real sense of trust between one another anymore. Like, and then these factors completely change based on if you're rural or in a city, and then they completely change in the standard. Just within California alone, there's a difference between the culture of Southern California and Northern California. There is big differences between the East and the West. There's even bigger differences between the North and the South. And you have a lot of people who no longer have the ability to communicate with one another because of these lies. Why I went off into this tangent, I don't know. But I get really fucking upset. Where I'm just like, learn your history. You're just a product of the current narrative. You're just a product of the current psyop, that they're trying to get you to like, they're just trying to pin you up to one side to do what? To rob you blind again. I always like using the example of, oh, they took our jobs, right? It was such a prevalent thing back in the early 2000s to say that they are taking our jobs. No. Nobody took your jobs. They shipped them. They outsourced them. They moved them to China. They moved all of the physical equipment to China. They took all of the skilled laborers from America to train Chinese workers. I'm sorry that I hit my microphone. I'm just saying, like, people forget that these are actual tangible things you could look at with verifiable identity. And here's the other bigger kicker that people are just forgetting. The values have shifted. It is no longer cool to maintain a normal job. It stopped being cool to maintain an average job since the 80s. Since the, I want to be a rock star. Since that time, it hasn't been cool to have an average job. It's why men have operated the way they've operated now. It's why everybody wants to be a scammer, a trapper, a drug dealer, a this, a that. It's why, you know what I mean? Like, what do you expect? For like people not to want to live different lives? Because, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, kids had dreams at one point in time. I wanted to work for the Secret Service as a kid. Like, what the fuck? All because of Austin Powers, by the way. But either way.
What do the people get out of this war? The fighting and the taxes. What is the United States doing in this war with Spain in the first place? True, Spain is oppressing Cuba, but so is England oppressing Ireland, Egypt, and India. France is oppressing Siam and Madagascar. This is 1898. Turkey is oppressing Armenia. Should we then take up arms against the oppressors of the world? We would more likely end up by becoming oppressors ourselves. The Spaniards and Cubans were bushwhacking one another and killing from 3 to 5 men at a battle. We have gone down there and killed more people in 3 months than they would have killed in 13 years. If they were starving before, who feeds them now? What are we going to get out of this war as a nation? Endless trouble, complications, expense. Republics can't go into...
You don't get the weapons contracts. You don't get to touch the money that gets laundered out of your country at all. That's for the weapons defense manufacturers. That's for the pharmaceutical companies. That's for the actual ecclesiastical class that also gets to liaison between the dealings of the DoD and all of these private firms. And here's the best thing, right? Like, I have a group of friends that I think are fetishizing the Ukrainians, and they're because one friend in particular said he wanted to commit war crimes in Ukraine. Literally said that. And guess what's happening to everyone out there right now? They're getting literally charged for war crimes. But you know, he said this from a place of sadness because his family conditions are not the best, and anybody who would be forced to live under those circumstances would self-deletion themselves. But he's a very different individual. Very different. But just to hear him say that, just to be like, oh yeah, I wanna this and that, I don't give a damn, like, it just baffles me to think, like, I don't know. But with the current situation in Ukraine, one of the funniest things to see happen was the amount of pharmaceutical branches that they had in Ukraine. Not a single nation in the world has as much funding nor as many medical or pharmaceutical companies, offices. Not a single place in the world had as many offices as Ukraine did. Nowhere. They literally had every single pharmaceutical company working out of Ukraine. What are the statistical anomalies of that? And And it gets even worse when you look at the funding that they got. When did they get it? During what president it was? 2014. Who liaisoned for the dealings of some of these private DoD contracts? Hunter Biden. You know what I mean? Like, it gets... The level of disbelief people have to put into this, I'm just like... And it gets so much worse. Absolutely so much worse. When the actual truth comes out about why a certain president back in when were the plans drawn out? 2013, right? I think that's when the first... I think that's when John Brennan himself went to Ukraine. When people figure out that this whole Nazism thing is kind of more deeply rooted than people think, it's like you've been rooting for the people that have been destroying, raping, poisoning our food. That's who they're rooting for. And that's where I'm at right now, where I have to live with like having family who's experiencing side effects. I have to live with knowing that I have friends who might suffer from all this because the litmus test, they didn't pass the litmus test. Because from a very foundational core, from the very institution that brought them up, they believe that system wouldn't lie to them. That's where we're at now, where we have to come to terms with the fact that, or at least I think I have to come to terms with, it's just some people will always value other things more than others. And the reason why I just absolutely hate ideologues is because it's a very personal issue for me. Because one of my best friends, Nicholas Murphy, so I don't know what happened to him. He just stopped talking to me. I don't know why this is hard. But he was like my best friend since like college. But the more time went on, the more during the Trump presidency went on, he went balls deep into this ideological warfare. And he never said anything disparaging to me, but I could tell that he had convinced himself that all of this was a problem. Like, right, he was looking at the symptoms of all of this, which is the immigration problem, which is the cultural problem. He's looking at the symptoms of this, and he's blaming I felt like me, right? Because we talked about this a lot during our college days. And I was naive back then, but even I knew that like affirmative action wasn't actually a good thing. So like I would agree with them, but at the same time, I could see him just do the blanket statement, blame blame the magistrates, and not want to think any further than that because it was too difficult. And he couldn't believe the amount of nepotism that was in government. And it's like, that's a problem. Because for whatever reason, not just my buddy, but a lot of other people that I've met think that the problem is super simple, super cut, and super dry. And it's like, you're not looking deep enough into history. You're not looking at the actual fact that there is no religion. There is no nation. There is nothing that they hold an allegiance to that is tangible to your paradigm of understanding things. Because the way they've influenced all of these nations, the way they've infiltrated and thus gotten the results they've wanted, were through unconventional means. Were through spying, were through blackmail, were through forms of obfuscation because they know what happens when the public figures it all out. But practically, this video is almost done.
To the conquering business and remain republics. Militarism leads to military domination, military despotism. Imperialism smooths the way for the emperor. And as you know, inside every US president, there's an emperor that's trying to get out. And our job is to stuff that emperor right back down into his gazoo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And it goes to show, like, there is a big difference. I don't know if people noticed it, but there is a very big difference of what happened when Trump left office. He told everybody to go home. He didn't try to fight. He didn't tell people to do anything dangerous. He told people go home. And he left the office, right? He let the Democrats take the office. And honestly, the more I think about it now is the more that was a great idea. Because people like my homie, at one point they were just calling him Zion Don. And I was just like, you have clearly lost your mind. Like, you're not looking at the... How do I say this? They were only looking at the problem through such a very nationalist point of view, which is why I call this another Weimar Republic. You're not looking at the geopolitical sense of it. You're not actually looking at the treaties. You're not actually looking at the history. You're not actually looking at any of the allegiances, any of the other meanings. Talking about meanings, right? Let's talk about the monkeys, right? Because that, right? They're not talking about any of that. And it's just like, how do you want me to believe that you have all this figured out and you know who it is when you want to ignore that all these other people don't have any of the affiliations, any of that blood work that points to them being tiny-headed individuals? In actuality, it proves that they are from a much, much older lineage that is far older than some empires. No, they're too pure-blooded. That's why. Oh. And it's funny, right? The only people that would claim to be pure-blooded individuals would be these individuals. So if these ideologues that my friend joined were to have their way, the only people they would put into power were the people that want him dead. Because my buddy, I don't even want to say what he looks like. You can imagine, right, with a name like Nicholas Murphy. But his is the most targeted class of people there is. They're erasing you from history. At every point, at every turn. Not only that, but they're also erasing you from all popular forms of entertainment. Storytelling, comic books, television. And yet, the other side of the aisle wants to ignore that that is a form of genocide. It's kind of like, you know, there's this meme that I got that is like, haha, funny, squeaky wooden doors. And then the other person's like, oh my God, how could you make fun of that? And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, you know how many Latin Americans, not just Mexicans, I'm talking about all of Latin America. You know how many Latin Americans died at the behest of ideology? At the behest of an identity above all? I'm like, let's not even talk about the Native Americans, right? Because it gets into this whole thing of, why should I give a fuck about your day if you never gave a fuck about my... You know, if we're gonna play that whole little virtue thing about how, like, ooh, I have a day, I have a month, I have a day, I have this. Either way, I want to get into why I named this whole thing Deletion. Oh, gotta click open the video first.
Because we're going to be waking up.
That's right, we are gonna be waking up to the truth, my boy. The truth will set us free.
Because we're going to be waking up. The vast majority of people that have taken the shots are going to be going through a red pill moment. Not taking years, not taking even months or weeks. They'll be trying to absorb all this information in an extremely short period of time, and many of them will go ballistic. So I expect I expect frequent, irregular, episodic instances of chaos. But it'll be sort of an organized chaos in the sense that the people that go crazy won't be lashing out, most of them won't be lashing out at the society at large. They'll be going crazy and lashing out at their abusers, very specific individuals. So it wouldn't surprise me, for instance, to see many of the people that we now title the elite be picked off one by one by one and basically removed.
No. I don't know if I should do this for fair use purpose. Probably doesn't even matter. You can't even watch any of this dude's stuff on YouTube. But to bring it up, it's already happening to some degree. Like, these people can't walk on the streets anymore. Like, at all. Have you seen what happens to Trudeau? You know what happens to Trudeau every time he walks on the street? Like, that dude is like public enemy number one. Have you seen what happens to the Prime Minister of Italy when he goes out to eat at restaurants? Like, nobody, like, I don't even know what it's like in other places, right? Because I haven't seen any of those videos, and I'm pretty sure there's already more videos of looking at other PMs, prime ministers, being berated by their citizens. To this day, one of my favorite ones is Macron getting sissy slapped across the face by a leftist, no less. Because let's be real, you can't look like that and not be a leftist. But yeah, let's get back more into this.
From this planet by the actions of people that they have harmed over these last 2 years that would be unpredictable and not unstoppable. You need to stand back, okay? People need to understand that there will be a section of the social order that is going to go crazy in anger, grief, all of this, and there will be reactions, and it's best to not get yourself in the way of those reactions, especially if you're not like a law enforcement personnel kind of fellow that's trained in it, right? Because these will be very violent reactions to having been poisoned. And some of them I expect will be spectacularly so in terms of the violence of it. So it's not going to be wise to hang out around these elite guys.
I think you're stupid to think it's only the elite that are going to get this. They've already been sowing the seeds of, oh, it's the tiny hats. They're the ones behind it all. Like, they've been sowing these seeds for a while now. And the only thing I see, right, if you're an idiot, if you don't know what the fuck the American Nazi Party is, you're an idiot if you don't know what they got charged for. Actually charged for. This is in the books. So it's like, oh, let's see what you got charged for. Oh, all the very exact same rhetoric that this other group of people was saying. So like verbatim, it's their belief system is what the American Nazis had. The FBI is looking at this shit like, oh, this is a clean cut case, boys. Wrap it up, right? Like, they just the same thing with the Buffalo shooter. They already know about you. They already know what the fuck you're up to. More than anything, there's already probably an FBI informant in your fucking group. I've already called out 2 of those motherfuckers. Successfully. Hawks, you fucking know. I got motherfuckers that can attest to that shit. And it's just like, they've even admitted it and lost their job because they got called the fuck out. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm looking at this from a point of view where I'm like, all right, let me look at history, let me do my research here, let me see the kind of tactics they have. Like, I have, either way, I'm not gonna get into that because you know what I mean. There are ways for you to be able to identify these people. There are ways for you to be able to identify the narrative, to seeing these shifts, and that's this whole thing about alt-right, ideologues, identity, all of this bullshit. These are dominoes that have to be set up with years worth of experience. That's why they make all of these laws. That's why they allow all of these fucking cases to go through to set precedent, is so that it's easier for them to throw the book at you. So the FBI is looking at all of you as like some guppies, all because at the end of the day, they're going to use all of these old white people as an excuse to prevent this from happening. The adverse anger that people are going to feel about being lied to, especially after what, right? Because this is the thing that I knew it was inevitable. At least in my circumstances, it was the Muslims that were involved, right? Because the way I saw it back in 2018 was, you cannot have a social order group who advocates for all of the social justice bullshit and also will advocate for Israel. These two things cannot exist within the same field of view, right? Eventually, around 2018, 2019, it happened where you had a lot of people starting to take stance against Palestine or Israel, and they were SJWs. So you had SJWs still to this day internally having this fight between Palestinians and the Israel lobbying firms. This argument has still yet to completely unfold amongst itself. Right now, what we're currently seeing is the capitalist argument, where we're watching, right? Because it's happened with Twitter. Well, you know, if you want to do whatever you want with your own social media platform, how about you own it or build one? Well, Elon Musk, you know, in a weird way, karma served its justice in Elon Musk trying to buy out Twitter. And then when it came to push to shove, it was, oh, so, but you were the one that said that I should actually do something about this if I had the money, if I had this, or if I had that. Right? We're watching these arguments crumble and fall in practicality, in actual use, in actual function. So, I don't know. I have a lot of hope with seeing the way the paradigm is shifting. But some things I really do question, and I really do pray. Because I don't want to see anything bad happen to my friend Nick. I don't want to see anything bad happen to any of these people that are in these, stuck in these idealistic paradigms that make absolute no sense if you think them out. Like, if you actually look at the history of the Nazis, it was a complete inside job. Complete inside out. Because nobody wants to question the OSS. Nobody wants to question the creation of the CIA. Nobody wants to question the fact that any of the psychological experiments, the data, the systems, or how then all of that was then bundled in with music, rap culture, with social culture. Nobody wants to bring this up. There's a reason why the CIA calls them sex kittens. Like, there's a reason to this. It has nothing to do with the way cats handle themselves. It has to do with behavioral science and the way people develop all of this bullshit. All of this bullshit. And that's why they're leaning in on the fact that you will put your identity above it all and blame a very tiny-headed particular group of people. But they're just the employees. All they were doing was they were just doing, I did a good job, right, master? Like, right, there's somebody still above them that they have to answer to, because if they don't, you know what happens to gammas. Everybody knows what happens to gammas. And I don't even want to talk about those motherfuckers in the chat. Either way, I think I'm going to end this with one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen. Kind of want to talk like a bit like a, can I talk like a Aborigine. Come from Australia, speak a bit like an Aborigine. Elongate my vowels a bit. No, did I? I guess not. This one. All right, let me turn this on. Turn this on.
Oh, false eyelashes were invented in the 1800s by a French prostitute. Do you want to know what she called them? Do you want to know?
What'd she call them?
You want to know?
I do.
I don't care if
Tell
you don't
me.
want to know. I'm telling you.
Now I do.
Tell me!
She called them cumbrellas. And she called them that because she used them to keep the semen from getting in her eyes, because that shit burns.
They're cum umbrellas. Cumbrellas.
I will no longer call them false eyelashes. From this day forth, they will be known as cumbrellas.
Yes. I will not be calling them that. You know, I don't want to say that I have personal experience, but it works.
And this is why I always told my friends that you guys are just as utopian as the freaks on the left. Because they always told me that, oh no, magic powers. If magically these circumstances were magically to happen, magically the rest of the world falls in line. And I'm like, not really. How are you going to get all of these men to do all of that work when their values, their belief systems, and everything that fabricates them as a being is fundamentally different from, right? In this case, I was talking to a particular friend who's very traditional. And I told him, how are you going to force all of these other white men whose identity is fabricated differently from your belief system, because he was from Texas, how are you going to get them to do these jobs if they value completely different things? Like, if they value rap culture, how are you going to get them to do janitor work? How are you going to get them to do any of these low-level jobs when their belief system is more geared to trapping, to doing bad stuff? Like, how are you going to... Whoa. And that was just the men. It doesn't get into how are you going to raise them. It doesn't get into what values are you going with it. What literature are you going to push on them? What are you going to do with the education system? What are you going to do with trade? And it gets into this aspect of, like, some people were just, utopia, it works. And it's just like, nah, doggy. No. Western critique. Dude, I can go on this subject for days because I just spoke about it from a perspective of the woo-woo of they're going to want to blame tiny-headed people for blah, 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 for blah, 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 blah. And in my opinion, those people are suffering from, like, psychosis. They're beyond, like, they are a different breed of, like, human. And the reason why I say this is because I don't know. It reminds me of, like, some crackheads that I've seen when they leave prison. They're battered. They're jumpy, they're paranoid, they don't trust anybody, they think that everybody's out to get them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to say anything really disparaging about the whole collective as a Jewish community. But at the end of the day, like, there are specific groups of people that do act like this, right? And then if you live in Israel, I believe you're suffering from, like, forms of Stockholm syndrome because you're under the constant beratement of sirens, a fear state mind. There are actual deep psychological rooted experiences that happen and become trauma because of living under those circumstances. And that's my belief. I'm not a professional by any sorts, but I'm pretty sure that's what happens when you put people through those experiences. I don't know, right? Let's ask the Palestinians. Oh no, that's a terrible joke. Why am I doing these sorts of things? I'm not saying fucking a peach either, right? Like, oh hell no, by no means. Every community has their own subset of problems, and there's a lot to be said about American communities. I mean, a lot. Nobody's perfect, and it's kind of why I always wanted to get to, like, doing a good sense of representation of the Western critique. Because not enough is actually said about you stupid Americans. And there's nothing that distinguishes you from anything else. Just because you're a white American doesn't mean you can classify yourself in the sense of any European white. And just because you're black corresponds the same with African blacks. And just the same with me being Mexican corresponds the same with actual Mexicans from Mexico. Like, I still remember so deeply in my heart when my heart was broken by my family members, by everyone I knew, by all of the friends I had. When I would call myself Mexican, they would look at me and tell me, no, you're not. You do, like, because for them, all they saw was, no, you did not suffer the same fucking struggle we did. Shut the fuck up. That's what I always got from my family members, my friends, everyone that I ever experienced this kind of friction between me and people who actually lived in Mexico. I visited a lot, so, but it gave me a deep rooted appreciation for why they would say that. And because I later appreciated understanding that even the Mexicans here in America or in LA don't treat me like I'm one of them. And it's just like, what the fuck is this? And it's because everybody's playing an identity game. You have to be just like me. And it's just like, oh, here we go. It's why I've developed a very deep-hated root sense of ideologisms and all this other bull. What else can I put? Any other video I want to put? I don't think so. You know, watch the Telegram. Got the news on there for you. You know what I'm saying, dog? I'm always looking out for the homies right here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I have nothing much else to say besides, God, do I hate ideologues. I just absolutely hate when just people put everything and they put it above logic, they put it above reason, they put it above everything, because that's how the world ended up the way it is now. My group of people, like, right, it's like you know, the Holy Land. Well, my group of people said this, well, my group of people said this, and then it just gets very vindictive, and then it gets, right, and we see it develop to the point of bloodshed, this and that. But it only ever benefits one group of people. The ultimate beneficiary owner. Who the fuck benefits from this? Ultimately, whose name is on that contract? Because I can tell you right now, it's most definitely not a Stein, not a Steen, not any of those guys. I can guarantee that, my boy. Because if you were actually to name them, those motherfuckers would be after you like